if it means that you're going to become angry, resentful, or feel some type of way that isn't aligned to how you desire to feel in your relationship, then it is your responsibility to ask for that support. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, and last week I asked the Codependency Alchemy broadcast on Instagram, what do you want to hear from me in March? What do you want me to talk about on the podcast? And I got some amazing responses, and there was one that was almost identical. Two people who don't even know each other had almost asked the exact same question. So I'm going to start with answering this one because it's a great one, and I feel like I talk about it here and there in different episodes, but it'll be nice to kind of get into it a little bit more deeply. So the questions that they submitted, not my post-it literally matching my beanie. It's so funny. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you'll see. So let's dive into their questions. The first one was, what is reasonable and not reasonable when asking for support from your partner? The second one is, what are things I can rely on my partner for, and what can I not rely on my partner for? And honestly, my mind goes in a million different directions with these questions because there's like the day-to-day things like chores that come to mind initially for me, because when we're living with our partners, like that's usually a point of contention. So I'm going to talk about the day-to-day chores aspect of like what we can rely on our partners for support on. And I'm also going to talk about relying on our partner to be the providers of our safety or our good feelings about ourselves, because that can also come into play in relationships. And because these questions are kind of vague, I want to speak to both of them. And hopefully this will give us a little bit more of a well-rounded response to these questions. First, let's talk about the day-to-day chores. And something that is very common when we start thinking about, okay, well, can I rely on my partner to support me with the cleaning of the house, with the laundry, with the food, with grocery shopping? And a common core wound or story that comes up for a lot of women that I work with, and for myself too, is I'm asking for too much. Doing that is too much. It's my role to do that. Like all of these really deep-seated core mother wounds come to the surface of, I can't ask for what I need. I can't be too much. I need to just do everything and hold the burden of all the things on my own. But hey, that's what we're working on in this whole podcast, right? Is to really tend to the part of us that has that story and begin to start relating and interacting with our partners and in our relationships in a totally different way. So I want us to first just debunk that story that we tell about us being too much or asking for too much. And I want us to do some shadow work really quickly around this core wound of being too much. So the question I want you to reflect on is, if I ask for support or if I ask for what I need, then what will happen? What are you afraid will happen to you? Or what are you afraid it will mean about you if you ask for what you need or if you ask for support? Some common responses I get when I ask the women in the membership this question is, if I ask for what I need or what I want, then I'll be seen as too much, right? And if I'm seen as too much, then they will leave me. And if they leave me, then I end up alone. Some other ones have been, I might seem selfish, I'll seem needy. There are also some fears around asking for what you need and other people unwilling to meet you in that. So they don't even ask because of the fear of rejection that they will receive by asking. The reason why doing this shadow work and asking these questions is so that we can get to the root and see, oh, of course I don't want to ask my partner for support. Of course I don't want to rely on them for support or for help, because if I do, it'll mean that I'm too much and then they'll leave me, right? Or it'll mean that I'm too needy and then they'll leave me. Or it'll mean that they are unwilling to do it, and so then I'll feel rejected. So it's like, of course you don't want to do it, because if you did, there's this fear of abandonment and rejection that is coming to the surface. So we want to understand that we don't ask for support or we don't ask for help a lot of times because there's this core wound that needs to be met by us first. So I know that's kind of a little bit of a tangent from these questions, but I think it is also really important to note, because a lot of times why we don't ask for support has a root that has us in that pattern in the first place. And if we're going to shift out of that pattern, if we're going to begin to ask for help, if we're going to begin to share with our partner what we want and what we need to uncover why we don't in the first place. So that'll be your invitation to explore what is the root of that. And if you want support on doing this type of work, that's what the membership is for. We meet every month where I can walk you through step by step the shadow work process, the inner child work, so that you can do it on your own over and over and over again. This is seriously something I do probably at least once a week, if not more, depending on how dysregulated I am. But now that we kind of did a little bit of shadow work, I just wanted to give you guys that invitation, because I don't think that making changes in the way that we relate and how we interact with our partners makes lasting change unless we have tended to some of the roots as to why we are in that dysfunctional pattern to begin with. But when it comes to asking for support from your partner and like what's reasonable and not reasonable, it comes down to how you desire to feel. And you've probably heard me already speak about this on the podcast, but what is reasonable is subjective. And if you're like me, you're going to hate that answer, because you're going to want to be told this is what's reasonable, this is what's not reasonable, and have it be black and white. And it's unfortunately, I'm sorry, just not the case. What's reasonable for you is going to be different than what's reasonable for me based on my capacity and based on your capacity. So what the real question is here is, how do you desire to feel in your relationship? And then anything that you are doing in the relationship that isn't aligned to how you desire to feel, then it is reasonable for you to ask for support in that specific thing. So if we're talking about chores here, right? If I desire to feel supported, and actually this morning is a great example. There are still dishes in my sink right now. And if you've been here a while, you know that this is like this is like my thing that I do not like. Like, I want no dishes in the sink ever. It's my need. It is my need. And because it is my need, it is my responsibility to tend to that need. But it is also my responsibility to make sure that I don't become resentful in my relationship, because that is also not how I desire to feel. So I love when I record podcasts and like I always have a very like real experience day of. So yesterday was a really busy day for me. I did my free masterclass on healing the mother wound with over 130 people signed up. It was a work day for me, and it was a Saturday, and I don't usually work on Saturdays. And so I don't know, I'm not going to get into all the details, but there was a lot of work to be done. There was a lot of prep, both physically in my environment and both energetically in my environment, to prepare for the masterclass. And so I did the dishes that day, I cleaned the house that day, did all these things before starting to prepare for the masterclass in the afternoon. And when Justin got home, dishes were done, so they just needed to be unloaded, and that's it. That's literally it. The kitchen was all clean. Oh my gosh, I should show you guys a video. Like, my kitchen is not even clean. I can't even look over at it. Oh my gosh. Justin came home from hanging out with friends, and he was kind of upset that he wasn't going to be able to play video games in the office because I was going to be working in the office. Didn't take it on as my own. I was just like, this is just what it is. Like, you get to be upset. I totally understand. But he pivoted. He figured out what to do. He brought his gaming stuff out into the living room, hooked it up to the TV. Again, I didn't go and try to fix it for him like I would normally do. I let him figure it out on his own. And he did. Let that be evidence. They will figure it out on their own. Just let them figure it out. They're going to grow in their resilience by doing so. Anyways, so many tangents on this podcast episode already, you guys. I apologize. So I come out of the office after the masterclass, which was just so special, so beautiful. It was amazing. We talked about healing the mother wound, how the mother wound relates to codependency, and it's just out of this world. So much more I won't get into, but I'll actually link it in the show notes. So if you want to watch the replay. And the dishes were not unloaded. He obviously made dinner, so there's dishes on the stove and dishes in the sink. And I immediately got a little frustrated because I was like, I left a clean kitchen and now it is not clean. So here's where I'm tying in is what's reasonable to ask for support and what's not reasonable. For me, if I have reached a point of contention with my partner, it is reasonable for me to ask for support. It is reasonable. If I have more capacity that day and I want the dishes to be done, then I'm going to do them and not continuously hold a grudge against my partner. So there's a lot of work that I've done over the past few years where I understand that just because it's a need of mine doesn't have to mean that it is a need of his. And just because it's a need of mine, it doesn't mean that I need to make it a need of his. We get to have different needs, and when I reach a point of contention or resentment or frustration or anger, I'm starting to see him through this red lens, then it is reasonable for me to ask for support. So insert dishes with vacuuming, insert dishes with doing laundry, insert dishes with going to the grocery store. Now, I want to say they will not do the dishes, do the laundry, go to the grocery store, run the errand in the same way that you do. Just going to put that out there because we need to know this. They are not going to plan the trip the same way you do. They are not going to pick a restaurant for dinner the same way you do. So I think that sometimes we get a little tripped up because we want them to do the thing. We want them to support us. We want them to help. But then when they do, we critique it, we judge it, we shame it, we resent it even more. So what I've learned for me is, am I willing to let them do it in their own way and just allow myself to receive the support in the way that they know how to do it? Or can I change my environment in my mind, in my mental environment, and release him from this need for him to be something different than what he is? Over time, we can share with our partners what we appreciate about how they did something. So when Justin does something, and this is why I think he does the dishes way more, even though I'm complaining about the dishes being in the sink right now, he does them way more, or he'll even say, don't worry, I'll do the dishes, because I have constantly affirmed to him, I love when you help me with the dishes. Thank you so much. That was super supportive. Instead of, why do you always leave dishes in the sink? Why do you never take out the trash? Why do you never put the laundry in the laundry basket? It's literally 2 feet away from it. Instead of harping on them about what they're not doing, if we can begin to notice and pick up on the things that they are doing, that can be extremely supportive. Because think about if someone constantly basically told you that everything that you're doing is like just shy of okay. Just like, oh, you did this, but you also forgot this. Oh yeah, you did this, but you also forgot this. Like, oh, why did you do it that way? It's just like at a certain point, our partners are just kind of like, what's the fucking point? That's what I think is happening in relationships. Our partners are just like so debilitated with fear of doing it wrong that they're just not doing it. So I think if we started to notice how we are communicating when we are wanting support, that can be a huge light bulb moment for us. How are you communicating you want support? Are you doing it through this negative feedback loop, or are you doing it through a positive feedback loop? So a negative feedback loop looks like, you never help out with the dishes. Why did you leave dishes in the sink, etc., etc. A positive feedback loop is, hey, thank you so much for helping out with the dishes. I really appreciate it. If they haven't helped out with the dishes, but you want them to, which is the exact situation I'm in right now, I decided that I am at my capacity and I desire support from my partner right now, which is reasonable because it's that how I desire to feel piece, right? I don't feel like I have capacity to do it without feeling resentful right now. And maybe that will change like by the time I'm finished recording that podcast. It's something I'll have to continuously tap into. But this morning I was like, I don't have the capacity. If I do the dishes, I'm going to be cursing him in my mind, and that's not fair to my partner and that's not fair to me. So I have to put down my need for wanting the dishes to be done right now down, because I don't desire to feel that way in my relationship with him. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes I wonder if my brain makes sense to you guys, because I don't really know. You should tell me in the comments, actually. If you're watching this on YouTube, do I make sense? Am I a crazy person? I actually already know the answer to that. I am crazy. I don't know why I'm going to give you guys the go ahead to tell me. But I left the dishes. So if I'm feeling like I'm at capacity after this morning and working, and I'm just going to feel resentful towards Justin if I do the dishes and clean the house again after yesterday, then when he gets home, I'm going to just simply ask him for what I want support with. Hey, can you please unload and load the dishwasher? That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to give any more detail, just simply an ask. If he says yes and does them, great. That's all we need, right? Insert, hey, can you please take out the trash? Insert, hey, can you please do a load of laundry? Insert, hey, I need help folding the clothes. Insert, hey, can you please go to the grocery store? Here's a list. Whatever it is that you're needing support on. Hey, baby just pooped. Please change his diaper. You get to ask for that. If it means that you're going to become angry, resentful, or feel some type of way that isn't aligned to how you desire to feel in your relationship, then it is your responsibility to ask for that support. So notice how I didn't say, hey, you never change the baby's diaper. Like, I need help. You're not helping. You never help out. Hey, you never take out the trash. You never fold the clothes. Hey, I need help. I've done this all day and you haven't contributed at all. Like, notice how I'm not saying all these details where I'm putting my partner down. I'm just simply asking for what I need. This, I think, alone can be a game changer if we can say it just unruffled, right? Without all of this like pent up energy, without all of this like, you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, you never help out. Like, just simply identifying what is it that I need support with right now because I'm feeling resentful. And now, can I just ask? Oh, and now I have a thought coming in. I see where this is going. Okay, so there's going to be some of you that are listening to this and they're like, I don't want to have to ask. I want them to know. I want them to know there's dishes in the sink and the kitchen's a mess. Like, just know that it needs to be done. And like, intuit what needs to happen. Because the laundry is in the basket and it's full and you have no underwear, like, know that you need to do the laundry. So for those of you out there that are like, I want him to want to do the laundry, I want him to want to do the dishes, I want him to do it without me asking. My question to you is that supporting you? Is thinking that, is wanting them to be a mind reader and them continuously showing you that they aren't, is holding on to that worth it? The time and energy that it takes that you complain in your head or that you are upset in your head alone with all of the burdens that you're placing on yourself because you're just not wanting to ask for help because you want them to just know that you want help in the first place? Like, is the time and energy that you're taking holding on to all those burdens really less time than it would take to just ask for what you need? Because that's what it came down to for me. I can either be a big ball of frustration for who knows how long, days on end. I could just have a stalemate with Justin and just go days with our kitchen being a mess because he probably wouldn't do the dishes. I mean, I don't want to say that he wouldn't, but like, I don't know, he probably wouldn't, you know what I mean? And I can be like, nope, well, I'm just going to see how long until he finally does them. And so then we're going to live in a messy house for several days, which is already dysregulating to me. So like, I'm literally at a war with myself at that point, rather than when he gets home, just simply saying, please unload and load the dishwasher when you get a second today. I've identified what I needed. I've asked for what I've needed, true, brief, and clear, without all the details. Now, if he says no, I'm too tired. No, I don't want to. No, I'm not going to do it. Because I get it. There are men out there that are just no men. They're not going to do it. That is when I would say, I hear you saying no. Can I please share with you why I'm asking for you to unload the dishwasher? So you're asking for consent, which if you're new here, just listen to like 90% of my podcast episodes. Asking for consent is always the first thing we want to do, especially when we're navigating conflict, because not asking for consent means that they aren't in a state of receptivity where they're going to be open to hearing what you have to say. It's almost like you're coming to the conflict with your sword and your armor, like already pointing towards him, and he's going to armor up and get his weapon out as well. And then you're in a conflict, you're arguing in circles and nothing gets settled. So you want to come to the conflict open, vulnerable, armor and sword down. That's where the consent piece can really help. So, hey, I hear you saying no, you're validating them, then you're asking for consent. Can I please share with you why I'm asking for you to unload the dishwasher? And then if they say yes, you share, I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit resentful because I cleaned the house all day yesterday and I had a lot of work to do yesterday as well. I'm feeling like I've reached my capacity and I could really use your support. Do you see how that's different than you never do the dishes, I always do them, you don't do anything around the house? Like, I just think about some of the things that I used to say and I just used to like bicker and like pick him apart, right? Like, do you see how different that is? Like, I'm not saying you don't help out with the house. I'm speaking about my experience. If we start coming to these conversations around support with our partners from a place of our experience rather than a place of picking apart them and what they're doing or not doing, it's going to change how that conversation flows. So I know I'm kind of going really off topic with the question about what's reasonable and not when asking for support from your partner, but I think that what's most important is figuring out how you desire to feel in your relationship, and then you get to filter everything through that. And that's what's reasonable or not reasonable. And then I think what's even more important than that is like how to navigate those conversations, which is why I've spent the majority of this episode already talking about how to navigate those conversations. So what's reasonable for you is going to be different than what's reasonable for your mom, what's reasonable for your friend. My invitation to you would be, what are you desiring support around? And just make a list for yourself. Make a list for what you're desiring support around in your relationship. And then on the other side of that page, ask yourself, how do I feel when I don't get support from this? How would I feel if I did get support? I think that this could be really powerful to share with your partner if they consent to having a conversation with you about this, because our partners want to support us. Sometimes they just don't know how. And sometimes we've berated them so much that they just don't do anything because they don't want to do it wrong. And I think that that's probably more common than not. If you decide to do that invitation of writing down what you want support on, write down how you feel when you don't receive support and how you feel if you would receive support, and you share it with them because they've consented to that conversation, I would then ask them, how do they desire to support you? What feels good for them, right? Because it might not be 100%. They might look at that list and they're like, I can do these two and I'll do my best. And that's a step in the right direction, right? Sometimes it can be overwhelming. Maybe it's just one thing that you want support on. And just know that they're not going to get it right every single time. They're not going to have this conversation with you and then boom, it's landed like osmosis and it's just a part of who they are. I still to this day ask for support with the dishes, more times now than it used to be. He will just say, hey, don't worry, I'll do the dishes. That's a new development, and I've been doing this for 5 years, but I'm not holding this grudge anymore because I'm moving through it way more quickly because I'm just asking for what I need in the moment. Hey, can you take the laundry to the room? Hey, can you start a load of laundry? Hey, can you make sure you order groceries today? Like, I'm just asking for it, and instead of complaining over the fact that I need to ask for it, it's just asking for it and it being done. There's so much more spaciousness in my life when I just ask for what I need right when I need it, rather than festering on it and being like, how low do the groceries have to get before he realizes there's nothing to eat? Like, that's not helping anyone. Like, why are we doing these like blind tests for people? I wouldn't want to be tested that way. Can we just know that our gifts are different than their gifts, and our ability to navigate certain things is different than their ability to navigate certain things? And instead of making them wrong or less than for having a different way of navigating life, can we just work with what we've got? All right, so let's get into what are things I can rely on my partner for and not rely on him for in the sense of emotional support. I did a whole post on this on my Substack around self-regulation and co-regulation, and even did a podcast episode on this. This is the first thing that I would go to when it comes to answering this question on what can we rely on our partners for and what should we not rely on them for. If we have a dependency on co-regulation with our partners, then we really want to explore why it is we are avoiding self-regulation with ourselves. Because if our partners are constantly needing to validate us or reaffirm us or praise us for what it is that we're doing, and we're looking for our safety through our partners, then that person is holding our safety in their hands. And that is a heavy burden to bear. So we want to begin to reclaim that safety for ourselves through self-regulation, through shadow work, through inner child healing, because that is going to help us access the part of us that has the fear that is looking outside of ourselves for that validation, and instead acknowledging, okay, I see the part of me that wants my partner to tell me that he loves me because then that will make me feel safe. How can I first meet that need? And then after I meet that need, if I need a little extra reassurance, can I go to my partner for co-regulation? The more I do this work, the less I try to go to Justin for co-regulation, the more I just try to double down on meeting myself. Because in the beginning of my relationship with Justin, I relied heavily on him to constantly validate that he loved me, that things were okay, that he was never going to leave me, that he was never going to cheat on me. Like, I was constantly needing that validation. And as I've shared on the podcast before, that validation feels good for a moment. It feels good for a minute, but it's fleeting. Eventually, I need him to do it again, and I need him to do it again, and I need him to do it again. And so when we're in this imbalance in our relationship where we're constantly relying on our partner to make us feel better, they're going to feel that depletion in that dynamic as well. And that's what pulls people apart, because the person on the receiving end ends up being exhausted, right? Like, my words mean nothing because I tell you every single day how much I love you, because I tell you every day how much I want to be with you forever, but it's never enough. Then they start telling themselves the story, I'm not enough. And then we're in this dysfunctional dynamic where both partners actually feel inadequate. Both partners actually live from this place of anxiety. So the work that needs to be done in those moments when it comes to relying on your partner, it comes to, how can I build this safety for myself? And this can be beyond emotional. This can be with money. This is very common in relationships that have codependent dynamics. Like, one person in the relationship is the person who brings in all the money, and the other person in the relationship is the person who takes care of the house. And these are common roles that we've seen play out in households. And for me, I continuously remind myself that I want to be sovereign in the way that I earn money. I want to be able to spend my own money on things that I want. I want to be able to buy another freaking colorful beanie and not have to be like worried that Justin's like, why did you spend another $20 at Free People, right? Like, I want to be sovereign in that. So I think that can be something we will want to look at too. Like, are you relying on your partner for financial stability or financial security to the extent that you are staying in a relationship or a dynamic that's not healthy, right? That's when we start feeling trapped. So if you're starting to feel trapped, then the question is, what do I need to bring into my life? What action do I need to take in order to reclaim my sovereignty? Wow, y'all, this is why I need to ask way more specifically, like, what is the specific situation in which this question is coming from? Because do you see my mind? I'm like, it can go here, it can go here, it can go here. It goes literally fucking everywhere. And so I don't want to go everywhere with it because we'll be here for a long fucking time. But this question of relying on your partner is very much aligned with the first question of like, what's reasonable to ask for support or not, because they both come back to, how do you desire to feel? How do you desire to feel in your relationship with your partner? And do you feel that way? And what in your relationship is not aligned to how you desire to feel? And what in your relationship is aligned to how you desire to feel? Double down on the ones that are aligned, the things that are happening in your relationship that are aligned. Communicate those things to your partner. Start placing in more positive feedback loops. Like, oh my gosh, thank you for putting your laundry in the basket. That was so supportive. I love it when you do that. Hey, thanks for taking the dog for a walk. I really appreciate that support. And if they are doing absolutely nothing, like they sit on their butts and play video games all day, one, I want to tell you, like, Justin does that too. It's literally what Justin did like almost all day yesterday. Instead of judging him for the way that he decompresses or what he does, I just need to ask him what I need. I'm going to go on a whole nother tangent, but if they say no, I would start asking them more questions. Can you tell me more about your no? Can you tell me why you're saying no? Because usually what we'll do is we'll deep sigh and like passive aggressively walk off. But that's a time to lean in and get curious. Can you tell me more about your no? And start having them communicate why they are opposed to supporting you in that way. I truly believe in these types of conflicts, especially when it comes around support, and support around the house specifically, is we aren't asking more questions. We're getting defensive and trying to prove why us asking for support is valid. And you don't need to validate why you deserve support. You deserve support, period. You don't need to defend that. I would ask more questions as to why they are saying no. I want to know more about that. So we won't go down that whole rabbit hole, but yeah, take that as a tool as well. Can you ask more questions in that moment as opposed to defending why it's valid for you to ask for support? Because it just is, period. You get to have support Always, always, always. Now, if you have a personal experience that you're like, I need to just get support around figuring out how to navigate this, please join Codependency Alchemy, the membership. We meet every month where I do hot seat coaching. So you'll get one-on-one support from me, like live on the call, where I will give you language, I will give you support, I will give you tools to help you move through those experiences. And it's $9 a month or $90 a year. You get 2 months for free. And there's just so many other perks as well, like monthly masterclasses, private Ask Me Anything chats, where you can also drop in your experiences, your situations, and get support and feedback on them. And it's just a great community that we're building over there. And I would love to have you. So I'll leave the link to join the membership. It's a Substack subscription, so they're one and the same. And if this episode was supportive, please share it with someone who you think would also benefit from this. You can also like this video, subscribe, and if you haven't already, left a review, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is so supportive in helping my podcast reach other people who don't already follow me on social media. So I really, really appreciate you taking a moment of your time to share how this podcast has supported you in your relationship. So thank you all who already have done that. It is so beautiful to witness you all in your shares and the DMs lately. I just love seeing you guys. So thank you for coming and sliding into the DMs, telling me about how the podcast is supporting you. I love chatting with you guys. So have a beautiful day, babes, and I will see you next week.